Greetings and welcome to this beginner's guide for the ninja for Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood. Now, if you're looking at this video and you want to know either A, what is it like to be a ninja in Stormblood and can I do it, or B, you're already a ninja but you're having trouble doing maximum DPS or something is complicated and you want to know if there's an easier way of doing it. And that's what the video is all about. Now, over this video we'll be going over the basic combo, the ninjutsu and the basic combinations for it and what you should do for each scenario. And finally, the Stormblood abilities, what they are, how do they work, and the maximum damage combination of skills and weapon skills that we can do within 10 seconds. Now, all that will be happening later in the video, so without further ado, let's get to it, shall we? Now, to start things off, let's go over the basic combo that you learn as a rogue, shall we? Now, that is Spinning Edge, Gust Slash, Aeolian Edge. Now, as you can see there, Aeolian Edge does more damage, around 80 potency more from the back. So that's where we want to be most of the entire time, not just for this, but because that is the safest place usually for a boss. Now, aside from Aeolian Edge, there are two more ways to finish off this combo. The other is Shadow Fang. This puts a damage over time and a slashing resistance debuff on the enemy, so you want to keep this up all the time for 21 seconds. And then lastly, it's Armor Crush. Now, you didn't learn Armor Crush to level 54, and its use is to extend one of our ninjutsu, our self-buff, which gives us weapon haste and pretty much you want to keep up all the time. Now, that is technically 3 weapon skill combos that you need to remember. Luckily, it's 1-2, which is basically the same thing for every single one, and it only matters how you decide to finish off the combo. Now, Armor Crush is the other ability that deals extra damage from the positional direction. As you can see there, it says extra damage from the target's flank. Now that means you want to stay usually right here, on the border between the rear and the flank of the enemy. Now the damage isn't that amazing, but its use is not to deal damage, but to keep up one of your ninjutsu. Now, at level 30, I believe, yes, at level 30 you get 10. This is our first mudra, or you could say our first hand symbol if you watch Naruto. Now, this is the way you perform ninjutsu. Now, these are the 3 symbols you will get throughout your career as a ninja. At level 30, at level 35, and level 45, which is unfortunately a very long time between getting the second and third one, but they are all useful in their own way. Now, when you first get it, you'll be told that one of any mudra here will give you the Fuma Shuriken ability. Now, you also get this ninjutsu. Now, this alone doesn't do anything. However, once you have a mudra charged up like so, it switches to the appropriate ability. Now, that is the Fuma Shuriken. Let's do it again. As you can see, with any symbol, it'll cast that no matter what it is you're doing. Now, the important part is that it may not deal that much damage. If we go over into our abilities and job, let's see, here we go, Fuma Shuriken. As you can see, it's only 240 potency. However, it does have a 25-yard range, and it can be used with any symbol at all. Now, this is relatively important because our level 70 ability, which you can see over here, Tenchi Jin, is a bit on the complicated side, but we'll get over that in a little bit. Now, at level 35, you get your second mudra, Chi. Now, this offers up a actually 3 more different ninjutsu combinations that you can pull off. Now, the important thing to know about ninjutsu is that they are consumed depending on what it is you do. Once you cast a ninjutsu, you completely lose all mudra and everything goes on cooldown. The exact same cooldown for everything. Now, this is important because you need to decide what you need to do and what is appropriate for the situation. Now, what I just did there is right on. It is by far your most damaging single target ability in terms of ninjutsu. If you go down here, here it is. As you can see, it is 360 potency. That's pretty good. And it's every 20 seconds if you do nothing but that. Now, there are 2 more options. There is Katon, which is a AoE ability. It hits slightly weaker, 250 instead of 360. However, it has a pretty nice area, and you'll be using that most of the time in dungeons. And it's definitely useful to remember how big the area is, because as you can see, I was able to hit this guy all the way over here, and that's from the main target, so pretty useful. Now, lastly, we have Hyoton. Now, this unfortunately is the one I really don't use at all. As you can see, it's 10 in Jint, so let's see. Now, that is a bind. Now, as you can see, it lasts 15 seconds, but any damage will break it, as you can see. So that is really an ability that's only useful in PvP as far as I can see, or if you're being chased by something and want to get away and don't want to die. So that's really its only use. Now, those are the basic ones. Now, what about level 45 that I mentioned? Yes, when you get your third one. This is when things get really interesting, because you start getting access to the really fun stuff. First off is Huton. This is the thing you want to keep up all the time. So, it's this, and there we go. As you can see, this opens up our little thingamajig here. It used to be a little buff that was on top of our things, but if we read, it says, it basically gives us 50% lower weapon recast time and auto attack delay. Now, the auto attack delay is probably the most important part because of something we learn later on in Stormblood. But before we go into that, let's talk about the others, shall we? Then we have the Ton, which is Ten Jin Chi or Jin Ten Chi. Now, if this is starting to sound complicated, don't worry, I completely understand you. Now, let's look down here at the bar and see how I arrange the mudra for myself. Now, as you can see, I put them in the order that you get them as you're leveling up. This is, well, at least for me, this made it a lot easier to remember, because instead of memorizing a bit mudra name combinations and everything else, it's just a matter of 1, 2, 3, or switching that order, and then from then on, it becomes muscle memory. So for example, for the Ton, which is a little area that you put down, it's like this, and there we go. Now, as you can see, for some odd reason, the Ton is some type of buff that you get. It really doesn't give you anything, it's just so to help you keep track of how long it has. Although honestly, because over here we can see that it lasts 24 seconds, that's slightly higher than the cooldown of everything you have once you cast it. And that is, now speaking of uses for it, that is really only something you want to use when there are at least 4 or more targets. It could be argued that 3 is enough, however, you want to make sure that all 3 targets live at least long enough for the full duration of it. If they will not last the full 24-second duration, you want to use Katon instead. Or if it's only one target, you obviously want to use Raiton. Now, lastly we have Suiton. Now this is one that when I started playing, I completely ignored because I did not see a use for it. However, if you go over here, and we see this, we see Trig Attack. Now, when you first read this, you're thinking, well, I need to be hidden. Well, in order to be hidden, I need to be outside of battle, so let us leave battle, shall we? In order to be active, use hide over here, and there we go, we are now out of battle. So, when you first get that ability, you're like, okay, I need to be hidden, so it's an opener. So I start in stealth, go down behind my enemy, and do that. And now I can deal more damage to him. Now, normally, that is how things would normally work. However, the problem I have seen throughout the entire game is that hide is basically useless in dungeons, especially against bosses. All bosses, as soon as they turn in your direction, will automatically break it because you can't hide from them. It's ridiculous, I know. However, this is where Suiton comes in to the rescue. Now, as you can see, it's Ten Chi Jin. So if we do that button combination, 1, 2, 3, and that does that. However, as you can see, this buff right here says, allowing the use of actions normally requiring the hidden status. Now that is the most important part because as you can figure it out now, we can now use Trig Attack while in combat. And in a raid scenario, having everybody deal 10% extra damage to the boss for 10 seconds is a lot of damage that stacks up over time. Now, this is important because that is the way you initiate our most damaging weapon and ninjutsu combinations in order to do maximum damage to a boss. That is, unless you have to move, in which things start breaking apart and it gets a little messy. Now, the nice thing is that, as you can see, every single ninjutsu has 2 possible combinations in order to use it. Now, normally, the important part is how you end it. As you can see, it's either Jin, Chi, and Ten for Huton, or Chi, Jin, Ten. Now, this is important because as you start experimenting, for example, Raiton is Ten, Chi, and Jin. Well, no, only a Ten and Chi. However, if you go the other way around, if you just have to finish it, you end up with Suiton. This is important to remember because one of our final abilities, specifically Ten Chi Jin by that name, will allow us to exploit all of those weapon combinations and cast 3 ninjutsu in a row without them going on cooldown. That sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? It is. So without further ado, let's go into the Stormblood ability, shall we? So right here, you're probably wondering, what is that scroll there? Well, that is our Ninki Gauge. And as you can see, once it's filled up at least to 80%, which is the entire scroll, this is an extra 20%, it will unlock the use of 3 brand new abilities in Stormblood. That is Hellfrog Medium, Buffett Accra, I'm not really sure what that means, and the most important one, Tenchi Jin. Now unfortunately, Tenchi Jin and Buffett Accra have cooldowns of 150 seconds respectively. However, they are well worth those cooldowns. So first, let's see, go away. There we go. So the first, Hellfrog Medium. As you can see, this thing has a ridiculous range, so let's see what it is, shall we? It is literally a giant inferno frog that lobs a bunch of lava to the target and everybody around it. So it's pretty awesome. Now, one of the things you're wondering is how the hell do you fill up that bar? Well, it fills up with auto attacks, as you can see. Now, at level 64, I believe, let us confirm that. No, 66, you get access to Enhanced Mug. Now, Mug, unfortunately, is still a pretty weak ability with a 90-second cooldown that supposedly grants you extra stuff if you kill an enemy with it. Now, with Enhanced Mug, this fills up the bar by 30, making it actually very useful now. Because, let's see, every auto attack that we do increases it by 6. So that alone means it cuts out 5 auto attacks. And if we count the time, let's see, 1,000, 2, 1,000. Our auto attack delay is around 1.5 seconds, and with Huton on, let's see, 1,000, 2, 1,000. It's around 1.25 seconds. So that's important because it is cutting time out that you can't use your best abilities. Now, let's go over to the second ability, Buffett Accra. Now, this is by far our most hard-hitting ability in the game. That hits one time. I'm not counting Tenchi Jin because that is technically not an ability that deals damage, but something that allows the use of other abilities. And I'll go over that in just a little bit. Now, Buffett Accra, as you can see, is 550 unaspected damage. Now, as far as I can figure out, this means that it ignores all armor and resistances, which is pretty awesome. Shall we see what it looks like? Let's see what it looks like. Pretty nice, right? It's not. The good thing is that animation doesn't lock you into anything, unlike Assassinate, which is nice because that means you can move around. It does go on a 50-second cooldown, which is respectable at best. For something that hits so hard, it is definitely useful. However, let's fill up our bar again. Okay, there we go. Everything is set. We've got Hutonut, we've got 80 of our Ninki bar gauge. So now it's time to actually show you what Tenchi Jin does. However, let's explain a little bit because it does sound complicated. Now, if you try and read that, it'll make very little sense to you. Now, this comes back to the fact when I told you about ninjutsu. Remember when I said that when you use a ninjutsu, the mudra you use for it gets consumed. So for example, if I wanted to do a Fume Shuriken with 10, and then continue on to Chi and do a right down, I wouldn't be able to do it because the mudra gets consumed. That means, if you do a ninjutsu, you can't do anything that comes after it because it disappears. However, Tenchi Jin makes it so that that doesn't happen. It also makes it so that after you use a ninjutsu, the cooldown becomes 1 second instead of the full duration, which is what, 20 seconds? Yes. So, let's show you what this all allows you to do. And if you haven't figured it out, it's pretty easy. Unless you use... no, well, technically you could do the rabbit, but yeah. The powerful rabbit. Anyway, as you figured out probably by now, this lets you do ninjutsu within a row. However, the important part to note is that right there it says that... let's see, where is it says? There. In the second paragraph, the same ninjutsu cannot be executed twice. Ninjutsu recast timer will begin cooldown upon fading. Now this is important because that means we can use any ninjutsu we want in a row as long as we don't repeat it. So, what I usually do is first this one and then Fume Shuriken, then onto Chi, and then into Raidon, and then into Jin, which is Suiton, which doesn't deal that much damage, but it's the only thing that comes after. Now, other possible combinations are, you could start with Jin for Fume Shuriken, Chi for Raidon, and then 10 in order to refresh your Huton bar. Now, that is an option, however, it's not one I am particularly fond of because I feel that you're wasting damage, and I'll get into the reason why. Now, the other combination is to go from either Jin or 10 into the other one and then end with Chi. So, if we go like this, and like this, as you can see, we can use Doton. However, using Tenchi Jin on trash mobs, because that's the only place you'll use Doton with, is a bit of a waste, honestly. So we will not be doing that. So as you can see, the one I prefer is 1 Fume Shuriken, 2 Raidon, and 3 Suiton. That is my preferred combination, but it's really up to you which one you want to do. So without further ado, let's use that thing once this goes away, because you really want to keep it up all the time. Even 1 second that gets go down to 0.9 seconds can make a very big difference in your DPS and in your killing the boss before it wipes your party, and so on and so forth. Okay, ready? Here we go. So, activate it. First, Fume Shuriken, then into Right Thumb, and then lastly into Sweet Thumb. That is what that ability is, but then you can use that to again use Right Thumb for maximum damage, and that is how you use that ability. Now, as the only downside of that ability is that once you cast it, you can only use Mudra and Ninjutsu. You cannot even move, so if you're trying to use it on the boss, you need to make sure an AoE isn't coming or you don't have to move to save your life. Otherwise, it's completely wasted and you need to charge up your Ninki Gauge again, and that's going to take a while. In the dungeon, because you're striving to survive and deal damage, it really doesn't take that long, especially thanks to Enhanced Mug. But now that we've said all of that, what is the maximum possible damage that we can do within those 10 seconds? Well, let's charge up this. And if you excuse me, I'm going to wait for everything to come off cooldown before I show you that combination that I came up with myself, which is probably the intended combination. But anyway. Okay, so since everything is almost off of cooldown, let's go over it. Now, the combination that I'm talking about starts like so. Everything is off cooldown, or about to be off cooldown, and you are about to do your third part of your weapon skill combo. This is where you want to start right off the bat. Unfortunately, it's going to go away because I'm talking, but that's where you want to begin the weapon combo with. Now, the pattern is as such. Once you are ready to perform your final weapon skill ability, before you do that, you're going to use Tenchi and Jin in order to use Suiton, and then you use that for Trick Attack. That's going to put the debuff on the boss to take more damage. After that, you're going to go into Duality, finish off with Aeolian Edge to deal maximum damage, quickly use Dream Within a Dream because it's an ability, not a weapon skill, so they go on separate cooldowns and you can interrupt certain abilities with it. After that, you're going to go into Mug if you're not already at 100, but it's still damage. Then, once that's done, you will use Tenchi Jin, which will again let you use 10 for Fume Shuriken, then Chi for Right Thumb, and then Jin for Sweet Thumb again. Now, you are not going to be able to do another Trick Attack anyway because it goes on a long cooldown, and we have nothing else that we can use from hidden status, but that is it. And then, lastly, you're going to use Kasatsu to use Right Thumb again. So yeah, that sounds complicated, and it technically is, but a little bit of practice and you can get, well, and you can pull it off relatively easy. So, let's see if I can pull it off properly, shall we? Okay, let's go for the new title so it doesn't explode on us. Okay, so, ready? Here we go. And that is it. That is the maximum damage combination I have been able to figure out as a ninja in Stormblood. As you can see, that alone took half his life within those 10 seconds. And that is exactly what it is you want to do to a boss. Now, I'm not really sure how much health those things have, but obviously, on a boss, it's going to be a lot, well, not a lot, it's going to be more effective because it's a boss, but you're not going to really notice it that much. Are we out of combat yet? Now we're out of combat, okay. So yeah, that is the guide for the ninja in Stormblood. Now, hopefully you will find this useful. Now, there are some abilities I didn't go over because they're technically self-explanatory. Dream Within a Dream is just a bunch of damage. Duality lets you use, well, it doubles the next weapon skill you use, but that second hit cannot crit. But it's still another, especially, it's still more damage, so you obviously want to use that with Aeolian Edge. Or if you absolutely must not lose your Huton bar, maybe with Armor Crush, but that's really it. And then Kasatsu resets your ninjutsu cooldown and makes it so that the next jutsu you use is a guaranteed critical hit. Now, technically, because Suiton does less damage, you could use this before you use Tenchi Jin to reset the timer and make sure that that guaranteed crit hits it while the damage amplification is still on the target. Now, the order requires some refining, as you probably saw, but it's definitely a nice combo that people can not really, well, they'll probably be amazed when you pull it off properly in the dungeon because they're like, what is all that damage that is going on? But yeah, that is it. So anyway, thank you for watching. Hopefully you find this useful, and I will see you next time.